The Republican presidential field is growing with another candidate jumping into the race.
That's right. Miami Mayor Francis Suarez just announced his presidential bid this morning. His entrance into the crowded field comes just days after former President Trump appeared in court on federal charges in Miami. Suarez dodged questions, though, about Trump's indictment during his announcement on ABC earlier today.
And I think what Miami did is what Miami has done. We have lowered homicides
sir, I asked
to the
you what
lowest
you thought of
level
the indictment.
per capita.
Sir, I asked you what you thought of the indictment.
Well, and I want to talk about Miami. I think if we continue to have a conversation about the former president, then the former president will be the nominee.
For more on this, let's bring in CBS Miami's Jim DeFede, a fixture on the political scene there in southern Florida. Great to have you on the program, Jim. Is Suarez a serious contender, or is his announcement less about 2024 and more about 2028 and his positioning overall in the Republican Party?
Well, I'm guessing it's not even about 2028 as much as it is about providing himself some options. Look, we've seen this before. In 2016, we had three Florida candidates, Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush, and Donald Trump. And now here, heading into 2024, we've got Donald Trump again, Ron DeSantis, and Francis Suarez, except this time around, it feels more of a reboot of the old show, 2.5 Men. Francis Suarez is coming into this. He has a story to tell. I mean, as you pointed out, he's the only Hispanic in the race. He wants to try to make himself a generational figure. He can boast that he won re-election in the city of Miami by, with 78% or 79% of the vote, even though he wasn't really challenged in that election, but it's still a win. The problem that he has in the Republican primary is that, he voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. He voted for Joe Biden in 2020, and he voted for Andrew Gillum in the governor's race over Ron DeSantis in 2018. So it's hard to see how he has a path in the Republican primary when you support all those Democrats, but he's going to try to make that case, and he has pledged that he will support the nominee if it's Donald Trump in 2024. Again, I think this is less about him thinking that he's a serious presidential contender than trying to eventually, parlay the media exposure we're giving him into either a role as a pundit, maybe a position in somebody's cabinet. I know Kellyanne Conway has talked about him as a vice presidential candidate for Donald Trump. I don't think that's likely, but I think it's about trying to find a path for him in the future because he's term limited here in Miami.
Jim, you heard him wanting to talk about Miami. Tell us about his reputation in Miami and Florida.
So he's going to run in Miami as being someone who has created what he calls the Miami model in terms of dealing with crime. The first video that his super PAC put out was a scary, not very well produced video about basically crime in the streets and about how he can tackle that issue as a mayor. He understands. In Miami, he's facing a number of questions right now because he has not released who his clients are. He's a private attorney, and it turns out that from the good reporting of the Miami Herald, we now learn that a business who wanted to build a new building in Coconut Grove, a section of Miami, has paid him $170,000 on the side. At the same time, his office was helping push through the project. The Miami Herald has reported that project is now under both state and federal investigation. And so, the mayor may have some answers of his own. He's not been forthcoming with answers about that. There are a number of Republicans, most notably Congressman Carlos Jimenez, former county mayor, who just continually eviscerates Francis Suarez, calling him a fraud. I think, I don't know that he is popular among Republicans in the state of Florida for his views on Trump and DeSantis as well.
So then, considering that, Jim, what is Suarez's positioning then? Because as we saw in the clip from his appearance on a morning show today, he didn't want to speak about former President Trump's indictment. As you've just laid out, he voted for Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, the Democrat, for governor back in 2018. What is his relationship then with former President Trump?
He has no relationship with former President Trump. Look, he's at 0% in the polls because he has no name ID. And, his whole goal now is going to be to try to get on the debate stage in August, but he's a long way from qualifying for that. So we'll have to wait and see.
Jim DeFede, thank you very much.